I was in love with falling in love. The hot intensity of the unexplored. When every aspect of the other person is still perfect. They're funny, smart, sexy, generous, kind, perfect in every way. And they feel the same way about you, and you can't keep your hands off of one another. It's the absolute best high. And in my experience, it lasts about a year, give or take. The second year is when the cracks start to show in the facade. Things aren't so mysterious. Habits and quirks are less charming and more annoying. Lifestyle choices begin to be reflected in the harsh light of forever. Sometime in this second year is when I would start to realize that this was not the person I was meant to be with. Not consciously at first. Just little by little, like the proverbial frog in the pot. But I don't like confrontation, I don't particularly like being single, and I'm chicken. So in denial about the approaching end, the water in my froggy pot would start getting warmer, and rather than jumping out, I'd stew in what was most often growing mutual dissatisfaction. And start to look elsewhere for the spark. I'd start flirting mercilessly with my co-worker, castmate, employer, classmate. And I cheated repeatedly. There was the time my long-distance boyfriend drove from New York to Chicago to spend the weekend with me, but when he called to let me know that he had arrived a couple of hours earlier than expected, I had to send him on an errand while I ushered my new lover out of my bed down the back stairs of my building. Or when I was hooking up with the bartender at my restaurant job, while my boyfriend waited up so he could make sure I got home safely late at night after my shift. Once I had a boyfriend who gave me this sweet little pinky ring and asked me to remain faithful as I was leaving for a summer backpacking in Europe. I knew full well that the promise would be broken, but I accepted the ring anyway. Then, I would gaslight my boyfriends when they became suspicious by telling them I had no idea what they were talking about. When I got caught, I had to leave the relationship with my tail between my legs, and everything became my fault. When I didn't get caught, I got to pretend to maintain some sort of moral high ground, but knew I had sabotaged the whole thing and felt crummy. I was crummy. Eventually, I knew all this had to stop. So, somewhere around my 30th birthday, I made the decision that I should learn to stay in a relationship and work through issues if I didn't want to spend my life single, which I didn't. I wanted to get old with someone, and I wanted to stop being an asshole. I decided that the next serious relationship I had was going to be the person I'd marry. And then came George. He was smart, funny, generous, kind, educated. He got along with my mother. His mother loved me. When there were stumbles along the way, I tried to talk about it and work through them. This adulting thing was coming along very nicely. We entered year 3, and for the first time, I could see the future. This was the man I was going to marry. Then one afternoon, I went to see a movie. It was Sleepless in Seattle with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. The most romantic of romantic comedies about true love. In it, Annie, Meg Ryan, becomes engaged to her boyfriend, a nice, handsome, regular, kind of goofy, but kind of boring guy named Walter, played by Bill Pullman. She has convinced herself that she is happy with him and that he is the best match for her. The only problem is he isn't her true love. Sam, Tom Hanks, is her true love, and the movie is about how true love and destiny win. As I was watching this movie, I started to feel kind of sweaty and felt like the air was thick and it was kind of hard to breathe. The physical sensations got so intense that eventually I felt like there was something really wrong, and my anxiety ramped up to like 25 on the scale of 10. I was having, for the first and only time in my life, a panic attack, all by myself at the Grove Cineplex. I knew it was a sign. My relationship with George was so eerily similar to Annie and Walter's. George even kind of looked like Bill Pullman with that same sort of odd side part. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I couldn't marry this man. I was going to have to put on my big girl pants and break up with him without cheating first. Shortly after this happened, and before I got up my nerve, I went to the Sundance Film Festival in Park City. I was there solo, meeting people at screenings and following along to whatever party was happening afterward. One afternoon, I stopped to use the payphone to check messages on my home answering machine. This part of the story could never happen now. My cell phone. I was next in the long line for the phone, and the woman in front of me got on a call and started talking about my boyfriend. She actually said his full name. And she was talking about him as if he were her boyfriend. When she got off the phone, I introduced myself and said, "I think you were talking about my boyfriend, George." She stared at me in shock, claiming that she didn't know he had another girlfriend. We awkwardly started to compare notes and continued to do so at a party that night, where I spent a good part of the evening listening to her drunkenly spill the beans about their relationship. I learned a lot of intimate details I really didn't need to know, like how hot their sex was. And a couple I did, like they didn't use condoms. I was shocked, but not really upset. This woman had just handed me a parachute. When I got back to LA, I called George and told him that I had met his friend. He, of course, denied the whole thing, saying that she was a crazy stalker who was sex-faxing him, which is pretty sexy, and who wouldn't leave him alone, and that they had never slept together. It didn't matter. I was done, free. And as I promised myself, I ended the relationship without cheating. I just didn't do it for my true love. I did it for Walter. But this experience did prepare me for over 20 faithful years of marriage to a guy who made cleaning my act up worth it. And I am forever grateful to Sleepless in Seattle, with a little help from George's affair, for helping me learn that breaking my cheating habit was the right thing to do. It just had to be for the right person.